crying without end. The shocking family truth that will change how you see them forever, Archangel Michael says. The night broke in a hush that felt like a living thing. A door stuttered against its hinges and a voice cracked with grief. You stood there, holding your breath, while the house held its own. A phone buzzed against the table like a trapped insect. Whoever called did not wait for hello, only poured a river of words. Someone cried without end, and the river rose over your floor. They were telling a family member about you and your connection. They were spilling a secret your elders never meant to spill. The truth did not arrive with footsteps, it arrived with thunder. You sensed it before you heard it, a pressure in the air. Like rain that hovers and refuses to fall, it gathered. Then it began, a confession that would redraw your bloodline. The words tumbled, bruised by the mouth that carried them. Names slashed the silence, dates bled through memory. You knew the sound of something breaking that cannot be mended. The house listened because it always has. Walls remember the heat of every argument and the cold of every lie. Tonight the walls leaned closer, hungry for the final page. Archangel Michael says your spine learned a new language. It was the alphabet of warnings and miracles, spoken bone to bone. Your steps obeyed it and you moved toward the voice. A corridor stretched between you and the truth, long as grief. Each framed photo along the wall blinked like an old lighthouse. Faces watched you pass, smiling the way ghosts smile. You were not a child anymore, but your hands shook like one. You pressed your palm to the door and felt every heartbeat inside. The voice on the other side drowned out the clock itself. You pushed the door open and found two people, broken. One held a phone, the other a tissue, both holding a storm. Eyes met yours and the world took a sharp inhale. They had been waiting for courage to finish forming. It arrived with your footsteps and stood beside them. A sentence slid to the edge of the mouth and jumped. You were never meant to be kept in that lie, they said. The room swayed, and the air smelled like old paper and lemon oil. The house remembered the day the lie was born. Your name was misfiled in a cabinet made of fear. It had been pulled out, rewritten, and placed back carefully. They said there was a nurse, a favor, and a phone call. The nurse knew your mother and owed her a debt. A desperation settled like dust on hospital tile. A cradle stood ready in the wrong room. The swap happened between beeps and clipped whispers. Two babies cried and the hallway swallowed one truth. Someone signed a discharge paper with hands that trembled. Years later, the secret fattened on silence. It ate birthdays, first days of school, and photographs. The secret loved laughter because it could hide inside it. Your heart beat once, loud enough to startle the curtains. You wanted to scream, but the scream chose to be a breath. You asked no questions, the answers were already spilling. The caller sobbed into the receiver, soaked in regret. They said your name like a hymn and a warning. They spoke of documents, initials, and a ring with a nick. The ring turned everything. Not a talisman, but a hinge that opened a locked history. Someone once dropped it on a stair and put it back wrong. That nick became a breadcrumb that outlived a dozen stories. A midwife noticed, then an aunt remembered, then a rumor sharpened. Tonight, the rumor stopped being a rumor. Archangel Michael says a truth can be a blessing and a blade. It cuts the ropes that bind you, and it cuts the hands that tied them. Either way, something falls. You learn that your name belonged to the same people. But your place in their plans did not. They had rearranged the seating chart of your entire life. You had been loved, yes, but also maneuvered. Love wore a velvet glove, control flickered beneath it. The glove slipped tonight, and the hand was bare. Someone cried without end because shame is heavy. It drags through a soul and unthreads entire tapestries. They had been dragged for years, and they were tired. The confession moved from the call to the room. Stories walked themselves to your feet and knelt. They did not ask permission to be told. You began to see birthdays through a new window. Cakes and candles trembled on a windowsill of invented facts. The sky above those parties was counterfeit blue. There was a box, they said, hidden in a closet. It had been sealed with a belt and a rubber band. It held a letter with a date that would haunt you. The letter had your mother's handwriting on the envelope. The paper inside smelled faintly of jasmine and worry. She had begun it with, "My child," and ended it with, "Forgive me." The letter told you why a family can move like a chessboard. It told you how fear breeds bad choices and worse secrets. It told you she was sorry, and sorry again, and that she ran out of time. Your knees remembered the floor, and the floor remembered your knees. You sat without deciding to, and the room lowered itself to meet you. All at once, your life became a hallway with many doors. Some doors were locked from inside and outside, both. Some were open but led back to the same place. One door stood at the end, lit from the bottom. The crying did not stop, but it changed weather. It went from storm to steady rain, then to mist. You could hear words again, like stones in a river. They spoke of money that moved like a shadow. Of signatures that didn't match when the light was honest. Of a house deed that liked to hide in the dark. There was an estate once, and a grandfather's quiet generosity. He tucked envelopes into books and called it security. The books changed hands, but the envelopes vanished. A cousin learned to counterfeit a sigh and a smile. They learned the shape of your trust and slipped inside it. They made phone calls you did not know were about you. The family map redrew itself with thin, pale lines. Blame tried to pick up a pen, but your calm took it back. Every line, you vowed, would be corrected in daylight. Archangel Michael says, you have a right to your true beginning. You have a right to each room that was taken. You have a right to stand in the doorway and ask nothing, need nothing, just be. You rose, and the walls stepped back. The air returned the part of your name it was holding. Outside, a streetlight hummed like a low prayer. You walked to the closet like a pilgrim to a spring. Your hands did not shake now, the shaking had finished. The belt and rubber bands surrendered, brittle and resigned. Inside, the box was only a box until you touched it. Then it became a pulse, a doorway, a gravestone and a cradle. You opened it and the letter rose to greet you. Your mother's handwriting held a kindness even in confession. Ink looped around your future like someone holding your face. She admitted the choice, named its fear, and named you again. She said the night was loud with sirens and moral thunder. She said the hospital windows were mirrors of decision. She said the nurse was family in every way but blood. The nurse had brought hope and panic in the same pocket. A call was made, your grandmother answered with a yes. They chose the pathway where you would never want for bread. But they stole the place where your name was supposed to rest. They stole the first truth you should have been given. They stole a piece of peace you now intended to retrieve. The letter did not defend, only confessed and pleaded. It asked you to live brighter than the shadow it described. It asked you to break the habit of hiding. Your chest unlocked like a window in spring. Fresh air hurt, as fresh air often does. You inhaled until your ribs learned the new size of breath. You thought of all the small ways you had felt misplaced. The birthdays that fit but rubbed at the edges. The eyes in the mirror that looked like someone distant. Now the distance had a bridge, if you dared to cross. You could meet who you might have been and who you are. You could introduce them and refuse to let either vanish. Someone in the room whispered that the truth is a kind of mercy. It comes late sometimes and knocks like a debt collector. But it can also wipe a ledger clean. You did not need a courtroom to begin your repair. You needed a kitchen table, a pen, and witnesses. You needed the audacity to say, "No more hiding." So a meeting was set for Sunday, under honest daylight. The house would fill with the people who built your weather. They would see you stand, and they would hear their own footsteps in your voice. On Sunday, chairs faced each other like old enemies ready to talk. The ring with the nick lay in the middle like a compass. The letter rested beside it, soft with the weight of what it carried. You did not accuse, though accusation perched nearby. You pointed instead, gently, to the map that needed redrawing. Names, dates, deeds, and blood were placed in their true positions. Aunties stared at their hands and remembered kitchens from long ago. Uncles shifted and tried to comb their hair with logic. Cousins ran out of jokes and found their listening. Your grandmother was a mountain whose snow finally melted. She admitted the call, the debt, and the fear that owned her. She wept like someone who found the receipt for a long-ago sin. You heard her and you did not look away. You held your spine in kindness and your face in clarity. The mountain came down, stone by stone, into a valley of truth. Archangel Michael says forgiveness is not permission to repeat. Forgiveness is a door that locks from your side, not theirs. It is the space you give yourself to walk out into light. You chose boundaries that felt like clean air. You chose documents that told the truth to the future. You chose to let love remain where it could behave. The cousin who moved the money tried to shrink. They wore excuses like borrowed clothes, ill-fitting and loud. You did not raise your voice, you raised the facts. Accounts were traced, signatures measured, and dates aligned. The cousin met the mirror they had been avoiding. Restitution stopped being a threat and started being a schedule. Not everything could be restored, but clarity could. Not every dollar could be found, but dignity could be. You pinned dignity to your chest where it belonged. When the table cleared, the house breathed with you. It had been tight with secrets and softened with truth. The walls relaxed and the windows stopped rattling in weather that had passed. In the days that followed, healing moved at its own speed. It did not march, it meandered, doubling back sometimes. But it always found you again, carrying something it had learned. You visited the hospital where the first story split. The corridors smelled like antiseptic and memory. A staffer helped you find a forgotten logbook. There, a note with the nurse's initials shook hands with the past. A time stamp matched your mother's letter by a breath. The logbook had kept what people tried to lose. Outside, a sparrow hopped along a curb and refused drama. You envied it for a moment and then blessed your human heart. Your heart had work to do, and it was doing it. You wrote to the other family whose cradle once held you. You sent honesty first, then gentleness, then an invitation. You prepared to meet not as rivals, but as survivors. When you finally met, two histories approached the same table. Eyes searched for resemblances and found them like constellations. No one owned the stars, you only pointed and agreed they were there. You were not replaced in your own story, you expanded. The lines of your life did not erase, they braided. You felt more true, not less whole. Archangel Michael says a soul recognizes home by warmth, not by walls. You walked forward, noticing the warm places and staying in them. You let the cold places be lessons, not prisons. At night, the crying returned sometimes, but softer. It carried gratitude inside it like a candle in a jar. You could cry and not drown now, you could float. You learned to love the people who chose you and the people who lost you. But you loved yourself first, on purpose, without apology. That love changed the way rooms greeted you. Your name felt healed in your mouth, weighty and right. You said it aloud and it answered with an echo you trusted. You signed it on forms and each letter stood taller. Birth certificates were corrected where correction was possible. Family trees were annotated, not burned. Photographs were relabeled in a handwriting that would not lie again. The house that first heard the confession learned new songs. It traded whispers for lullabies and locks for lamps. Guests came and left with truth on their coats like light snow. The cousin who cheated the ledger returned with sober eyes. They apologized not in paragraphs but in consistent actions. They never touched a paper without permission again. Your grandmother kept a quiet garden and planted honesty in rows. She watered it with apologies that did not beg for absolution. She harvested peace and left it in bowls on your porch. You placed the ring with the nick on a new chain. A flaw once used to divert a story became its keeper. You wore it where your pulse could touch it and remember. Your mother's letter lived in a frame near a sunny window. It did not testify to sin, it testified to growth. Each visitor who read it saw a possibility for their own courage. Sometimes you still walked the old hallway in dreams. The photos along the wall blinked, and the house listened. But now the listening felt like protection, not surveillance. There were dinners with laughter that did not hide knives. There were holidays that did not ferry contraband sorrow. There were toasts that tasted like water after too much salt. You began to mentor others whose histories had been bent. You taught them how to hold facts without letting facts hold them. You showed them how to step into a self that had been waiting. Work changed because you changed. You created space around your days like a moat of quiet. What did not respect that moat learned to look for another castle. You kept your birth story on a shelf within reach. On hard days, you took it down and felt its spine. It was yours now, and it no longer weighed more than you. Archangel Michael says every choice you make today fathers tomorrow. You chose clean pages and told truth to the pencil. You chose sunrise habits that did not need darkness. You learned that not all family is safe, but all truth is. You kept the ones who could love without rearranging your edges. You blessed the ones who could not, from a distance that kept you whole. On the anniversary of the confession, you invited everyone back. Not for a trial, but for a meal made of light. The table didn't shake this time, it hummed. You read a small note you wrote to your younger self. It thanked them for surviving the days when survival hid in ordinary moments. It promised to take them somewhere wider. Glasses clinked and nobody flinched. A window opened itself and let in a forgiving breeze. The ring on your chain felt warm as a live ember. You did not pretend the past was kind. You chose to be kinder than the past. That decision tilted the whole house toward joy. There will still be nights when the old ache calls your name. When it does, you will answer with the litany of your choices. You will remind it that daylight lives here now. You will think of the nurse and the fear she carried. You will not excuse her, but you will not carry her anymore. You will set her down like a story that finished its telling. Your mother, who wrote the letter, remains a doorway. When you walk through, you bring flowers of boundaries. You leave with a shawl of peace that you weave yourself. Your grandmother will look at the garden and see the medicine she grew. She will speak less with words and more with careful presence. Her hands will hold the air like it can bruise. The cousin will return utensils to drawers without being asked. They will clean a dish they did not dirty because the house is shared. They will speak of money as something to steward, not to steal. You will love the family you have and the family you found. You will be the hinge that does not creak. You will be the room that doesn't hide anything in corners. There will be children who inherit your corrected map. They will not need to unlearn the shape of their name. They will walk into their lives without the ache you carried. Someday, one of them will ask about the ring with the nick. You will tell the story of how a flaw saved a future. You will say that light can travel through cracks and still be light. Archangel Michael says, "The truth did not come to break you. It came to release what was already breaking. Now, what remains will be strong enough to hold you. You will keep a lamp in your hallway forever. Not because you expect darkness, but because you keep a promise. When someone you love reaches for the switch, there will be light. You will answer every echo with your full name. You will sign it on mornings like you sign a pact with the sun. Your signature will mean, I am here, intact, and unhidden. And if the house ever hears crying again, it will know the script. First, it will open the window to let the air change. Then it will call your name, because you are the one who knows what to do. You will keep a chair by the door for anyone bringing confession. You will keep a pen on the table for any map that needs redrawing. You will keep your heart unlocked for truth and latched for harm. This is the life after the shock, the clean horizon after the storm. It does not erase what happened, it changes what happens next. It is the life you choose, every day, with both hands. The house nods with its hinges, and the walls agree. Outside, the sky wears an honest blue you can trust. Inside, your name fits you like it was made for you, because it was. You stand in the doorway, ring warm, letter safe, breath steady. The echo of the past keeps a respectful distance. The future steps forward and does not look away. You speak quietly, and the quiet listens. I am the keeper of my story now, you say. And the story will be kind, because I am. Archangel Michael says the day after truth has its own weather. It moves through every room and touches every cup and curtain. You learn to breathe in it like a newborn learning day. You wake to sunlight that behaves like a blessing. It lingers on the letter frame and rests on the ring with the nick. The house stands quiet, not from fear, but from peace. You boil water and watch steam rise like a promise. The kettle sings and you do not flinch at the sound. You pour, sip, and feel the map inside you settle. You open a drawer and take out fresh folders. You label them with the names that now belong in daylight. Each label becomes a step on a staircase you can trust. You call the registrar and speak your truth like a clear bell. The voice on the line honors your steadiness. Forms are explained, next steps are named, and you are seen. You call the archivist at the hospital. They remember the logbook with surprising tenderness. They agree to hold a copy for you in the reading room. You email the other family with thoughtful grace. You include no blame and all clarity. You attach a photograph that smiles without trembling. You walk your neighborhood and let your feet map new safety. Every tree is counted as evidence of life continuing. Even the cracks in the sidewalk look like lines of a story you own. Archangel Michael says your body will ask for patience. Healing is not a sprint, it is a series of steady corners. You take each corner as if you are guiding a lantern. You choose a deeper silence that does not hide knives. It is a silence made of rest and honest time. It is a silence that waters the garden of your next days. You sort old photographs at the kitchen table. You write true captions in the neatest handwriting you can gather. You refuse to let any face float unnamed in your future. You find an album wrapped in cloth from years ago. Between two pages lies a paper pressed flat by memory. The paper holds a phone number, a date, and a single word, return. You call the number and a man answers with an old kindness. He worked nights on the ward and remembers the nurse by her laugh. He remembers the shift when the world changed its labels. He tells you the nurse carried grief and debt like twin babies. He says she wanted to be good and kept failing at the edges. He says she left a note for herself that said, "Make it right." You thank him and write those words in the margin of your day. They feel like a thread you can pull to repair the cloth. They feel like an oath you can keep without hurting anyone. At lunch, you invite your grandmother to sit beside the window. She holds her cup like a fragile moon. Her eyes carry storms and blue sky together. She apologizes without pleading. She speaks the plain soil of the past and does not plant excuses. She says she wants to be part of what you build now. You nod and slide a small plate of fruit toward her. You ask for clear deeds and straight lines. You ask for her garden wisdom applied to paper and law. She smiles in a way that lets you believe her. She calls the attorney she trusts to sort clean truth from old fog. She sets a date for signatures and witnesses. Your cousin arrives with a ledger and remorse in equal measure. They place the book on the table with both hands. They look at the ring on your chain and cannot look away for long. They speak in actions more than words. They draw arrows where money flowed wrongly. They propose repayment not as a performance but as a path. You accept the plan with conditions of sunlight. Every step will be documented in ink that does not smudge. Every step will be shared with the family who deserves to know. Aunties bring food and a stubborn affection. They have questions they write down and then burn in the sink. They keep what matters and let the smoke take what never did. The younger ones sit on the floor with wide eyes. They listen to grown people model repair like a craft. They will remember this day the way you remember first light. Archangel Michael says your voice has learned a new register. It is not loud, but it is unbreakable. It carries far without shouting and returns to you without echo. You choose to visit the other family at dusk. Dusk is a gentle seam where two colors meet without fighting. You bring bread you baked yourself and leave room for grace. When the door opens, faces bloom with recognition and surprise. Some eyes hold tears that arrived ahead of you. Hands reach and you let them, carefully and real. You sit at their table and place the ring and letter between you. No one tries to own the objects, everyone honors the meaning.